Welcome everyone, this is your host Abraham L. Jaguar, a professional game master. First of all, this channel is proudly sponsored by Magi-Knights Awakening. This is a magical girl and Super Sentai inspired tabletop role-playing game where you get to confront mythos-like horrors. You will find it in the description and in the pinned comment. This channel is also proudly sponsored by D3 Studios, the publishers and developers of Dames of Asstoria, a tabletop role-playing game where you play as monster girls, experiencing high adventure in a world that doesn't fully accept them. They have recently released Daughters of Lamb. Excuse me. This is a pay-what-you-want tabletop role-playing game where you play as cybernetic nuns with guns, looking for the missing pieces of their AI god. You will find it in their website. The links will be in the description and in the pinned comment. This channel is also proudly sponsored by the Red Room Publishing. Please check out their store for exclusive tabletop RPG products. They have recently released Savage Swords. And this is a Conan-inspired tabletop role-playing game where you get to explore ancient civilizations and confront forgotten nightmares. You will find it in their website. The links will be in the description and in the pinned comment as well. This time, I am continuing, in fact, wrapping up the review series featuring Asilo. If you haven't seen the other parts of my review featuring this tabletop RPG of psychological and clinical horror, please check out the playlist in the description below. This time I am going to talk about the included gameplay example, and I'm going to give you my final thoughts on this tabletop RPG. This is not the final version. There are still some tweaks, some polishing work that is being carried out, but for the most part it is almost finalized. So let's take a look at the example of play. I'm going to read it to you and I'm going to tell you my thoughts on it. Fernando just got his hands on a copy of Asilo and, after carefully reading it, decided to send a message to his group chat with Maria and Carlos. Guys, I think I found something to spice up our game nights. To spice up our game nights. Cool, says Maria. Do we need to set anything up? Anything to download? No, well, all of this introduction serves like an example of how Asilo is very easy to play. You don't need anything beyond the core book, just your typical six-sided dice and whatnot. So after, let's say, while waiting for both Maria and Carlos, Fernando outlines the theme of the session and how everything should unfold. And so they guide you through the design process. Fernando answers, blah blah. Mm, there's a lot of information on the preparation for this session. It guides you, I would say, it does a great job at guiding you through the entire scenario design process and the character creation process as well. So it continues. All right, here it is. Fernando looks at the summary sheets and takes some notes. Let's start with you, Father Pedro Almeida, says Fernando. Carlos adjusts himself on the chair and cracks his neck. You see yourself in front of your flock. You're preaching and people are listening carefully. The walls of the church are darkened and cold. The only light comes from the series of candles that are scattered around the place. And even though you've got their attention, you quickly realize that their eyes and mouths are soon shut. Here Maria whispers, "That's creepy," while she smiles and Carlos gulps. I would, if Maria's character is not there, or rather, if all of the characters are not there, I would prefer that the immersion is preserved, not by making those out of character comments. Here you have more details concerning the the situation, specifically the event or encounter that is taking place. Mm-mm. The gameplay example is actually really, really good. Although, yeah. Okay, if you haven't seen my actual play of Asilo with the designer Daniel Carvalho, check it out. You will find it in the playlist of this video in the description. Okay, if Daniel is watching this, do you remember when we were playing our session and do you remember how the atmosphere was preserved? There was that creepy ambience, but here in this example, the characters are constantly making out of character the players are making out of character comments like little jokes. It's so casual, no spice, no flavor. Everything technical concerning the character creation process and the general flow of play is good, but the out of character comments, yeah, there aren't too many. And I would say this example is much better than many other so-called roleplay examples in other core books that are horrible, terrifying in how awful they are. The two worst examples, well, that has more to do with the roleplay explanation. Fabula Ultima, terrible roleplay explanations. In the case of the Walking Dead Universe RPG, terrible as well. Those are the two worst. And in all of my years playing tabletop RPGs, throughout the decades, those are the two worst tabletop RPG examples of play that I have seen. So this one is actually decent, except for the out of character comments. So I would say it's lackluster example of play, but not as terrible as some others. So if you wish to improve upon this, if you wish to polish or improve this example, eliminate the out of character comments when the session is undergoing. Of course, you can talk before and after the session, but once the session starts and you start making out of character comments, jokes, and whatnot, every single one of those things puts a crack on the roleplay. The magic, the immersion is lost. And what are my final thoughts on Asilo? As I have said, this is not the finalized version. I would say this is an awesome tabletop role playing game because it focuses on clinical and psychological horror. No other tabletop RPG that I know of at the moment of this video accomplishes that. They all have psychological horror with elements of the supernatural. And while Asilo can be played like that, Asilo can also be played as a completely divorced from the supernatural sort of situation. The system is very simple. You roll a d6 for everything, or at most a couple of d6s. The sanity system is probably the most simple sanity damage system that I have seen. There is a slight, just a tiny bit of complexity when it comes to applying the phobias, the manias, and whatnot. But the sanity damage that you take and keeping track of it, it's as simple as you can get without losing that structure or robustness. So even though this is not the finalized version, my highest recommendation for Asilo. It is entirely flexible. You can play asylum sort of situations in science fantasy, science fiction, modern fiction, any time and place. You could have an asylum in the fictional outer space. So this horror game could easily be a sci-fi horror game. It could easily be a fantasy, psychological, clinical horror experience. It could be anything that you want. However, I do recommend that you don't play it too often because of its simplicity. It can get a bit repetitive or boring if you're constantly playing it. It is super simple, and because there is no continuation there is no campaign. This is for one shots. You could perhaps build a campaign around it, but this is more focused on one shots. This is something to be played once a month. If you really like it, once a month, or every now and then, once every 2 months. I would recommend do not play it so regularly because you're going to be like, oh well, been there, done that, and the shock value will be lost. This is just only my personal opinion. Despite that, my highest recommendation, definitely get Asilo. It is currently on GameFound. The link will be in the description. Please check it out. Thank you for watching this review series. Don't forget to leave a like, a comment, and subscribe. And thank you so much to those of you that are going the extra mile to support the channel. If anyone else wishes to further support the channel, consider joining as a member using the super thanks button. Take a look at the information in the description and in the pinned comment. This has been your host Abraham L. Jaguar, a professional game master. And remember, master roleplay and you will master the game. Once again, thank you and see you later.